So, thank y'all for joining us for another episode of Under Construction from Pain to Purpose. My name is Jessica. I'm our host today. And joining us is Miss Michelle Dixon. And we want to say thank you for coming to record with us today and being willing to share you and your family story with us. We think that's extremely special and love being able to create that safe place. So if you want, just kind of share with us a little bit about why you're here with us and what you want the world to hear today.
Okay. I am here. This is my daughter, Bella, and she was 18 and she passed away of an overdose. And I'm really wanting to just help others to have hope and to understand that just because our situation didn't necessarily end the way that I had preferred.
Yeah.
As long as your child or your loved one is breathing, there is hope. And, I just want to really try to be an encouragement to people that are going through it, to families. It's really hard on the person that's in it, but it's really hard on the families as well.
Yes.
And knowing that, you're not alone and, just try to provide some hope and encouragement in this really intense, stressful heartache that everyone is going through.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Bella. What was life like when she was growing up and she was little?
Oh my goodness. She loved animals. That is her. She was such an animal lover. And she was such a people lover. She just had so much love in her heart for everyone, unconditional. And she was just so funny. And when she was growing up, she was a different person than who we saw once the addiction started.
Mm.
And I think that's sometimes what gets so heartbreaking about addiction is you see that person, you don't see that person anymore that you're used to, that I saw for 17 years.
Yeah.
And then she was in addiction for a year and a half. So you watch just a complete 180, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
She never talked back. She was just the sweetest. That's how anybody would describe her.
Yeah.
And that's how we knew when the addiction started, something was really wrong.
Yeah.
She started the addiction when she was a minor, and in Middle Tennessee, where we live, there just wasn't a lot of resources. We tried to get her into treatment, and so many places told us, she has to be 18. I don't know if that's changed now, but, that was really difficult. I felt like didn't really have the resources to get the help that we needed.
Mm-hmm.
And the addiction just kept growing the longer she was staying in it.
Yeah.
And so, but yes, she was just a beautiful light.
Yeah.
Growing up, and yeah, definitely.
It seems as almost most people that develop an addiction that go through very dark times are some of the best people that I've ever met.
Yes. She did have some trauma
Mhm.
in her life. That for me, whenever she would see a counselor, when we, in her teenage years, we realized she was having issues, and no one ever used the word trauma with me. And then once she did get into rehab, that's when the word trauma I felt was introduced.
Yeah.
And then when I did some research on it, what had happened to her was definitely trauma. But that wording had never been used to me before. And so that was, I think, a game changer for me to understand why that addiction really grew and, was able to flourish with her was because, I'm sure not every addict has a traumatic experience, but quite a few do. And
Yeah.
she definitely did.
Yeah.
And so it helped me to kind of understand that it wasn't necessarily just a choice. She was just wanting to party. It was deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what age would you say Bella was when she started using?
Well, okay, we started finding vapes in middle school. I would say 8th grade. She was pretty young. Now, at that time, I don't vape, so I'm not very familiar. I think they were just nicotine vapes.
Yeah.
But then I know once she started high school, it definitely did transition to marijuana.
Yeah.
Was being used. But that was really the only thing I knew of was marijuana up until she was probably about 16. We did start finding empty alcohol containers in her closet. But again, she was like at home, so I knew it wasn't necessarily something she was going out, hanging out, and just trying to, party.
Yeah.
And so we, had got her into counseling. We had gotten her on medication. We tried to do everything that we knew of. There's even a DNA test you can take. So we had her swabbed to see what medications work best according to your DNA to kind of try to pin down which antidepressant exactly we should use that would work best for her. But I guess it just wasn't necessarily working or whatever. But she graduated a year early. We were so excited and happy for her. And so she was freshly 17.
Okay.
And the night of graduation, she was, while celebrating, was exposed or introduced to fentanyl. Now, she called it perks. I don't know if she didn't know what. I know at the end she knew what perks was, but so she told me she basically got addicted pretty much after the first use of it. And so that addiction to fentanyl went on for a year and a half.
Okay. And then she was able to finally receive treatment when she turned 18?
Yes. We tried to get her help once someone showed up at our house and we knew something was wrong. I thought it was a medication issue, that maybe she was having some kind of adverse reaction to an antidepressant she was on. Because her behavior had changed so drastically from the person we knew.
Yeah.
But someone showed up at our doorstep and said, I think she is addicted. So we took her the next day to receive help, and that didn't work out. In the state of Tennessee, I was told that at 16, you can refuse treatment. So that was frustrating because she was still a minor, and I'm still her guardian. I'm still legally responsible, for her. So we did on her 18th birthday. What is so heartbreaking is she had decided a few days before her 18th birthday to get clean. Nowhere would take her until she was 18. I did not understand withdrawals.
Mhm.
I had never been exposed to addiction. No one in my family, and no one that I knew really personally had been through withdrawals like that I knew about.
Yeah.
So I just thought she just sits up in her room and, well, whatever. And to watch what I watched her go through, no parent should ever have to watch that.
That's a traumatic experience in itself.
Yes, it was traumatic. And we had her little sister at the time, she was only 10. And so, we're all in the house trying to manage the situation.
Yeah.
And trying to keep, the little one, as shielded from what was going on as possible. But, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
So on her 18th birthday, though, we did drop her off that morning. Of course, she was severely ill.
Yeah.
The only comfort I thought is maybe she was able to get on Suboxone pretty quickly because she had been withdrawing for a while. I don't know. But because, the first 3 days she wasn't allowed to call me or anything. So, she was 18. So there's only so much I really knew of everything. But she did stay that month, and it was rocky. And then when she got out, she wanted to come back home, so she came back home. But the people were still in her life that were not helping her move in the right direction.
Yeah.
So she did stay clean for a little while, but not long.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of became like a revolving door, of rehab. And then we did try sober living. I think she was so young, and she just, her brain wasn't done developing yet. And I think if she had had maybe a little more life experience,
Yeah.
She didn't know what was going on with her. I didn't understand. And that, as a parent, is really hard because I tried to get help and I felt like I wasn't educated on what was going on and what to expect.
Yeah.
And that's what is sad. And I want to, for other moms of teenagers specifically, that are maybe a little harder to get help for,
Yeah.
or at least in my area.
Right.
We need that education to support them, because with any other condition, if your child had diabetes or whatever, you would be given a lot of information of how to take care of them and manage it. And I just wasn't given that.
Yeah.
And so I wish I had been.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what I hear a lot of is, for one, the pain that you've endured going through this. Because one of the things that, we typically resort to is not wanting other people to go through that too. But with the lack of resources and lack of knowledge of what is going on, you almost feel like it's impossible to keep moving forward. So tell us a little bit about how, since her passing, how have you been able to get up and move forward every day?
It takes a lot of work. I will, say that. I have found a group called GRASP.
Yeah.
that I think grief recovery after substance passing, again, there's not one where I live, but there's one about 45 minutes away. I go to two different locations.
Yeah.
That has helped. I, have done counseling. I would say also getting connected with, like Wake Up for Before You Don't, just other moms and people that understand.
Yeah.
Has really helped me because you feel like no one understands. And that's hard because a lot of people don't. A lot of people haven't lost a child, and a lot of people haven't experienced addiction and kind of the intense of what happens during addiction. Ours was kind of short, just a year and a half, but some people, they live through that for years of that. And, it's tough. And so,
Do you sometimes think if treatment would have been available for Bella at an earlier age, that there may have been a different outcome? Do you ever sit and think about that?
I do, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
She was so young when she started using, and there were so many factors.
Yeah.
That I think it definitely wouldn't have hurt anything if we had had more resources. That's what I would like to see in the children's hospital specifically.
Yes.
Is, they have a wing for psychiatric if someone attempts suicide. I would love to see an area, it doesn't even have to be a wing, for children that are dealing with substance use disorder. I think it's needed. And I feel like sometimes the medical community, I understand their heart addicts are hard, can be hard to deal with.
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes, there's not always, not everyone wants to like help or whatever, and just kind of want to push it off.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help the situation any.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I work with families often, and one of the things that is probably the most heartbreaking is when they have a minor child, and if there's not an immediate service available, and having to tell them that and hear the pain on the other end of the phone and feeling like it's a completely helpless spot to be in. I'm a mom. I cannot imagine. My kids are young right now, but I cannot imagine going through life and them experiencing something and me not being able to fix it, or at least help them go through it. And so I truly, the first moment that I heard about Bella, the first thing that I thought of was, this is a policy failure on our hands.
It truly is. And that's what was so heartbreaking through all of this is once you're 18, I understand you can make your own decisions and you're an adult. But when you're a minor, there's a reason that you're a minor. You really need help with decisions. And, when you're 16, 17 years old, of course you're not going to want to do certain things or whatever. And so that was definitely shocking, for one, when I was told that. I could not believe that in the state of Tennessee, that's how it is.
Yeah.
But then once you get past the shock, then it's like, okay, so now what do we do? Because I'm not trained in any of this, and I wasn't really given anything to say, yeah,
right,
here's your training or whatever, And so then you're supposed to manage it. And if you have other kids at home and everything, it's it gets complicated.
Mhm.
Yes.
It does. And just like you had said, where you said, if you go and your child has another condition, like say they have diabetes or high blood pressure or something like that, any type of chronic illness, they're going to give you pamphlets. They're going to refer you to a specialist. They're going to make sure you have what you need. But when it comes to addiction, you don't get given anything. And, that's why we've had a huge statewide movement and push for this, but also it's been severely neglected on youth and young adults. And so it's one of those like, where do we go from here? How do we, so at any point in the future, do you see yourself advocating for something like that? Or what do you feel like that you have done that has been purposeful since you have lost Bella?
Well, I would 100%. After Bella passed and I had time to really think about everything.
Yeah.
I did request her medical records. I went over things. That's something that a lot of people don't know. You can request medical records.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I had heard it on one of these things, and that's when I was like, I think I'm going to do that. So, I did, after all of that, I did ask for a review to be done from the place that I took her. And they did do a review, and I still didn't necessarily, the answer I was given was, we do not provide opioid withdrawal care. And I was shocked. Now I know it's given to like babies that are, but why isn't it given to older children? Especially if like that, it wasn't a doctor that prescribed Bella's, but what if it had been, and they became addicted under a doctor's care?
Yeah.
Then that's, to me, that's not really fair that, I can write you the prescriptions to get you addicted, but I can't, if you get addicted, you're out of luck because we don't provide that. So that was a tough blow. That wasn't what I wanted to hear. But I did reach out to the president and COO and shared Bella's story.
Yeah.
And just let them know that we have to do better for our children. They have to. She was so young, and who knows if things would have been any different.
Yeah.
But we don't know. Maybe they would have, had I been educated properly, had she received the treatment she needed.
Yeah.
Maybe. So.
And it's hard to sit on that of, the what ifs. And I think in general, families being torn apart from addiction is just heartbreaking. But even, the younger that I see, it is truly devastating when you have someone who has not had any type of life experience outside of being a minor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we do a lot of education around opioids and stimulants and overdose prevention. And we talk a lot about fentanyl now because it's primarily in our drug supply. And the more that we keep seeing our youth and young adult overdoses rise, it just brings me to a point to think of, like, I'm 31, so I'm still young, but I had my 10-year high school reunion. We had a memorial for the friends that we've lost, and I think that just speaks volumes to what has happened to the world. And the more that you sit and think of our younger population that has literally been wiped out from this, and it's like so often everyone sees all these numbers and all this data and but day in and day out, we see families. Like, we see the pain in families. We see families torn apart. We don't just sit back and look at numbers on the news. We see families broken and hurting because of this. And I think it makes a big difference. It makes it easier to advocate for things. But it's so much that goes on around us that sometimes it feels like the world don't stop spinning, you know?
Definitely. Yes. One of the things that I think Bella was struggling with at the end was 8 months prior to her death. Her best friend passed. As the same type of thing. And so, you know, I can't imagine losing my best friend as a teenager. That's a lot to process.
It is.
When you're already dealing with a lot. And so I think it has become very common, I guess is the word. And sometimes it just feels like to me no one's listening.
Yes.
And it's like, frustrating. But I think that the more people speak up,
yes,
and the more people it reaches, that maybe someone will start listening and say, yeah.
Society, they like to write off people that seem like they would have an addiction, right? So they like to put a stigma on what that would look like or what families they should come from or what their life looks like now, right? And almost just to write off as, they're just an addict or, but then you end up in stories like these where more than it's so much deeper to this isn't just that, like, this is a policy failure, Sorry, but back to what I was saying was the reason that I get so into the policy failure is because you don't have, like, you keep running into a wall of, I'm trying to help my minor child, right? And nobody's helping me. Like, no matter how loud I am, nobody's helping me. And then in turn, it's now I've lost my 18-year-old daughter and I've been begging for help all these years and nobody can offer me that help. And now where is the support? Do you see what I mean?
Yes, definitely.
Did you struggle with that end?
Oh, for sure. I think I still, struggle with that. The lack of support if your child is suffering from any other condition. The only condition I can think of that is not, support of anything to provide help for is addiction.
Yeah.
There's no other condition I can think of. And that's what, gets frustrating, about all of it.
And it's been deemed a medical disease.
Yes. And
that's where I can't find the...
I get so upset with myself. I was one of those people that, thought, oh, it's not a disease. But then when I started doing research, it has been classified as one. But people don't know that. And, I hate to say I was one of those people. And, I always say I wish I knew then what I know now. But, if it was treated that way, then I think it would change a lot of people's perspective. But that's not how it's treated, even though that is how it has been classified.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
I still have never been able to connect that, how we deem it a disease, but we don't treat it as one.
Yes. And it needs ongoing, Maintenance. Yes. Just like, anything. I have high cholesterol. I have to go get lab work and all the things over and over again. It's not just like a one time, okay, go to rehab, you're good. You should be good, whatever. Good luck. I mean, this is something that, in my opinion, a medical doctor or whoever needs to be, assessing this on a continuous basis, just like they would assess anything else.
It's almost like the world has profited off of pain.
Yes.
For a lot of families.
Yes.
So, last year you joined us for Overdose Awareness Day.
Yes.
And we do appreciate that. But what was that experience like for you?
It was very eye opening to just be exposed to all of the, different families on both sides, people that are recovering, which I think as a mom that's lost someone, it is good to see that people do recover and can, you know, it helps,
Yeah.
I think, for me at least. And so I did enjoy getting to see that, like the posters that were of everybody's like success stories, or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, because I do want to be inspired and inspire others that although it's such a traumatic experience and for everyone, you can, come out of it on the other side. It won't be easy.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, it's going to be hard for the parent that is processing the death of a child or in the throes of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be hard for the person that's walking it. So it won't be easy, but, it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
And, it with support in your community, it will be hard to do it alone.
Yeah.
And so that's what I loved about that is just that it really helps the community, helps you connect to others that understand.
Mm-hmm. And I used to, so I have most of my friends are dead. So there's a living with survivor's guilt that I don't know how else to explain. Um, so for a long time, I felt like, their families didn't understand me, but I also could see it on their end of how that's probably not something that they want in their face off. And I don't know that. That was just my kind of like, what I had assumed. Until one day when we were in here, and Miss Deb actually walked in. Mind you, I did not know this woman. I'll never get this. I was standing in the hallway and she looks over at me and she goes, "Hey, I'm coming to pick up one of those fentanyl t-shirts." And I was like, "Okay, come back there." So she come back there and she just immediately started talking to me and she had this paper in her hand and she was like, "We've been to a couple places to talk to a couple people and she's like, my son like wrote this poem and she was like, I don't know the point of me carrying it around, but so I'm like, well, let me see it. And so the moment that I like grabbed it from her, I felt this like transference of like spirit or something. I don't know what it was. It was so weird. But I knew right after that conversation, I knew that we needed to open the door to work with more families. And so we're not, even though we've had different experiences, we're not different. Like the community, you get to a point to where the more people you have in your life, the easier it is to not only stay accountable, but also be able to continue this life together. We have all struggled. And even though, some may have lost some may have that lived experience of it, it doesn't matter. We all have this common bond of addiction. And even though it may not be the best thing to bond over, out of that, I have seen so many beautiful relationships grow. And I know that all of us cross paths at some point for a reason. And even though, there's nothing that we can do to take away y'all's pain, we can be here to hear you, to help other people hear you, and that's what that's what basically our point of doing this was to be able to provide a platform that we have already had, be able to share that with other people to speak up, and whether that is they work in this field, they have lived experience with addiction, or they have lost someone that they love, whatever that looks like, that has been the whole point of this, is from all of us taking some kind of pain and turning it into a purpose in our life. I feel like that's what we bond over.
Yeah.
If you had a mom reach out to you today and she had a teenage child in addiction, what would you say to her?
Goodness, that's so hard. Is that, you know, first and foremost, love them because you never know when, especially with fentanyl, when it could be the last time. I'm not saying, accept what they're doing,
Right.
but I am so thankful that the last conversation I had with Bella was uplifting. I'm so proud of you, all of that, that I can, at least that gives me a little comfort.
Yeah.
Had my last conversation been with anger and frustration, I might, not be handling it, as well. I think it is very easy to be angry and why can't you just stop?
Yeah.
Like do what they're doing.
Right.
But I am so thankful that the last conversation I had with Bella was uplifting. I'm so proud of you, all of that, that I can, at least that gives me a little comfort.
Yeah.
Had my last conversation been with anger and frustration, I might, not be handling it, as well. I think it is very easy to be angry and why can't you just stop?
Yeah.
Like doing this, I know that's how I felt. And, but I think to try to, love them while trying to help them. I know sometimes you send them to like a counselor and, oh, fix her.
Yeah.
Or put them on a medication. Oh, that'll fix them. It's going to take work from the parent too.
Yeah.
Not just the kid. It's going to have to be both. And I think sometimes, I know for myself, you kind of think, oh, it's they need to fix this, or whatever. And I think it really, we need to try to work together. How can we do this together? How can I support you?
Yeah.
And, hopefully have the best outcome out of this. Because you just never know.
Yeah.
What's going to happen.
And that's what is probably the most unsettling thing, is you can't have a doctor sit in front of you and say they're going to live 3 more months. They're going to live 3 more years. That's the only unsettling thing is don't really have a timeline. You don't know if the timeline's going to end. You don't even know where it began. Like it's a big blur. But I know that the support and the sense of community is what keeps most families going. And especially the moving into some type of like advocacy or do you feel like you experience any type of stigma from this being a part of your story too?
To be honest, I have had a lot of support from the community, from church, my church. I haven't personally felt that way. I know when we were in it, I shouldn't have been, but I was embarrassed. I didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah.
So most people had no idea. They would even say, at the funeral and everything, we had no idea. I didn't want anyone to know what was really going on at home.
Yeah.
And I think so because of the stigma, I didn't want people to know. I think now I don't care anymore. Like this is what it is.
Yeah.
And if I can help someone, by standing up and saying, yeah, this is what she died from.
Yeah.
instead of trying to keep it a secret or hide it. For me, that's what I want to do. But for someone else that doesn't feel comfortable with that, that's fine too.
Yeah.
I think that just for me,
Yeah,
has been therapeutic for me to just go ahead and address it and seek help from as many people as I can. People that you wouldn't even think, um, come into your life.
cross paths with.
Yes.
So, has anyone reached out to you or talked to you yet about the positive impact you've had on them for sharing your story?
Yes. And that's, really touching because that means a lot. I've had so many people that were also like me struggling, and I had no idea. And I think that it really means a lot to me when people reach out and say that.
Yeah, that's something special. I know that it's a very vulnerable place to be in, and I know that it's probably extremely painful. But y'all have no idea how much I appreciate y'all for speaking up and being willing to share some of the most painful parts of your lives with us, because it also helps us too. It helps us help you all advocate. It helps us continue down a path of, there's things that even those of us in recovery, some of those family relationships have not been restored, and some of them probably never will be. And that's okay. You have to get to a point of where it's, because with addiction comes so many things. And like you said, you feel that embarrassment and shame of what's going on at home. And it's because it is not just a disease that people get. They just lay around suffering from it. It typically comes along with some type of medical problems and criminal justice involvement and social service stuff. So it's not really a disease that is positively looked at because of the nature of it. And so that's okay for families to feel that way, but it's not okay for them to not have that support when they're in that space to say, like, I am embarrassed and I'm ashamed, but this is what my family's going through. I don't think there's enough space for people to say that
Right.
without them feeling shunned. Like, that should be a safe place.
Yes.
For families to say, I'm embarrassed. This is what my daughter's doing, but I love my daughter.
Yes.
And like, we're getting through it day by day, but I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. And I think it's just because a lot of that social stigma. It's just because of what is put on it. It used to be something that we really could sweep under the rug. And it looked like we have a white picket fence family, and that used to be what it could be, and now it is shattered families all over the world. Like, it just shattered families, and we can't do that anymore.
Yes. It definitely affected our family, relationships, all throughout. And, when you're in it, that is really tough. But, I think one thing that people should be reminded of is that I wish I had done this more with Bella, but there's gonna be setbacks. And the way I kind of look at it is when I was trying to lose weight. It didn't happen overnight. It took me like a year and a half to get to where I was wanting to get. And really, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be managing that, And so I think we need to look at addiction that way too, is like, you're going to fall off the wagon, just like when you're trying to lose weight. You might fall off the wagon for a week or two or whatever. And then you can get back on the wagon and you can, and I think with addiction, sometimes we think, okay, you went to rehab, now you should be done, but be back to working and being a productive human. But, there are going to be setbacks and it might go on for a while, and
I think
off topic with it.
no, it's okay. I think that this has been great. I hope that this is a safe place for you. Do you feel like now that since Bill's passing that you have been able to obtain some of the education and some of the tools that you so desperately were seeking prior to?
Yes, I think that especially Knoxville has there's more resources.
Yes.
So I've definitely being connected to Knoxville have really been exposed to more resources. Where I live, there's just not a lot. And so that, as well as, I wasn't on like any kind of support groups like on Facebook, and now I have, and that has kind of helped me to understand more as well. Other people that have experienced things that I had, or we had.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of those things, I remember when I was trying to get connected, I would say, how can I get support? And they would say, attend NAR meetings or whatever.
Mhm.
And I would try to Google it and I couldn't find any near me, or,
Yeah.
and so it was just so hard for me, to also get that education.
Yes.
But I think now I've just had to go look for it.
Mhm.
I've had to do my own research,
Mhm.
and also, just really, because it's not so readily available. You really have to like kind of, at least where I live, search for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I don't think we have enough family services. Now it's growing because now so many more families are starting to speak out. So it is growing. However, the amount of people that we have lost and the amount of people being treated for addiction is not an equal hand of how many families we can support in the process. And even though we all have that common bond and we can help each other in a community, you still need that direct peer to peer to be able to understand. And so I know that, I hate that this is something that you have gone through. But I also am grateful that there are other moms that can give you support that we can't give you because we don't know, And so that is the part that I am thankful for. And y'all are a really great group of women. And even though I hear you and you always have to share so much pain, the way that you light up and are so proud when you talk about Bella, that right there just shows me that you loved her and there wasn't anything that you wouldn't have done for her. And so I hope that in this space you haven't felt any type of shame or embarrassment, or because that's not, people don't ask for those things to be felt. Those are things that society brings.
Yeah, Bella was a warrior. And that's what I want people to know, is that she lost the battle.
Yeah.
But she did fight. And some days she fought harder than others.
Yeah.
But addiction you're on the battlefield. And she definitely was. And she tried, and it just was too powerful in the end.
Yeah.
And
if there was anything that you could share with the world about Bella, what would it be?
Just that she would light up any room. She, had the